I told Dad on you. I was momentarily puzzled. But when I saw Director Mike glaring at me angrily from right behind Charles, I immediately understood. Mike quietly approached me and whispered in a low voice only I could hear. "You've been a nuisance for a long time. Even if you stay, there's no place for you here anymore. If you're smart, you understand what this means, right?" I struggled to control my trembling fists. After they disappeared, I submitted my resignation letter, eager to leave this company as soon as possible. "Hey, Charles, don't think your parents or anyone else will always clean up your mess." Charles sat back arrogantly in the seat where I used to sit. "Old man, what are you doing here? Outsiders aren't allowed in." He still doesn't know my current situation. Now, it's time for Mike and his son to be ashamed of their actions. My name is Tom Thomas, 40 years old. Single, living with my beloved dog. I work for the Japanese branch of the global sportswear brand Panther, known as Panther Japan Corporation. I've been with the product planning department, and it's been 5 years since I became the chief producer. So far, I've produced over 300 products, with about 30% being hits, which isn't too bad. Work is going well, but I've recently been dealing with a certain problem. "Good morning, folks. Let's make a killing off those suckers today." This crude greeting comes from Mike Davis, 55, the head of the product planning department. He's my direct boss. To put it bluntly, Mike and I don't get along. He may not be a bad person, but I've been repeatedly frustrated by his smooth talking and opportunistic behavior. Mike's weak points are budgeting and keeping an eye on the numbers. Additionally, he's equally bad at managing documents like invoices and estimates. Despite his managerial position requiring his final approval, Mike always signs off without properly reviewing them. Once, a newbie made a numerical error and skipped my review, sending the approval request directly to Mike. Even though the figures were clearly wrong, Mike approved it without even opening the file and forwarded it to another department. The annoying thing about big corporations is that all financial transactions are strictly regulated by intricate procedures. It may sound high-tech, but in reality it's just a series of emails and old-fashioned rubber stamp relays. Once an important document has gone through the approval flow, it's not easy for me, as chief producer, to retrieve it. I followed the retrieval request process and managed to get the document back just before it reached the finance department manager. Technically, this isn't my job. Not wanting a repeat, I reluctantly greeted to Mike. "I'll make sure to properly warn the new recruit, so please be careful next time and make sure to open the files." I felt like I was talking to a grade schooler. But unbelievably, Mike laughed heartily without a hint of remorse. "No worries. With a capable chief producer like you, I'll rely on you next time something happens. You're the fireman of the product planning department." He patted my shoulder as he said this. I was left speechless. Mike briskly walked past me and disappeared into the smoking area at the back entrance of the company. He probably wouldn't return for 30 minutes. Unfortunately, Mike's laid-back work attitude and habit of slacking off under the guise of smoke breaks aren't widely known in the company. Despite appearances, Mike is quite calculating. After just a few days of interaction, most people would see him as an approachable, friendly, and humorous department head. At least, I was fooled by that at first too. That's the tricky part about Mike. So why haven't Mike's actions been exposed so far? Ironically, it's because, as he said, I've been the one putting out fires behind the scenes. But I have no intention of forever cleaning up after an incompetent boss. Maybe now's the time to endure. I'll keep pushing on a bit longer. I vent my work frustrations daily by talking to my beloved dog. Everyone suddenly, "But I'd like to introduce a new hire starting today. Please gather." Right after lunch, Mike called the team into the conference room. Panther Japan Corporation has branches worldwide with over 10,000 employees. Some come from overseas branches and others go abroad, leading to high turnover. Mid-career hires are common, so usually introductions aren't this formal. But today, something felt off. There was a strong sense of suspicion. "Charles, you can come in." With Mike's enthusiastic announcement, the conference room door burst open. The man who sauntered in was likely in his early 30s, sporting flashy brown permed hair, and had piercings in his right ear and nose. It's not good to judge by appearance, but it was his first day at work. I couldn't help but frown. The man was barely wearing a jacket, with jeans and flashy gold sneakers underneath. I recognized his narrow eyes, aquiline nose, and wide grin. "Oh," I immediately realized. "I'm Charles Davis, Dad. You're working at a great place." "Right, from today, you're a proud Panther employee too." This man was unmistakably Mike's son. His face was the spitting image of his father's. "So, starting today, he's a member of this department." "Hey Tom, take care of Charles, will you? I'll feel better with you in charge." I felt dizzy. Now, on top of Mike, I had to look after his son as well. "No way. I'll provide the minimum guidance, but we're both adults here," I gently told the Davis duo. Mike looked displeased for a moment, but with everyone watching, he quickly returned to his usual fake smile. "Charles, let me show you the break room. Drinks are free here. Isn't that great?" "Dad, seriously, it's like a comic cafe. Panther sure is generous." The father and son left the conference room, laughing and having a great time. I sighed and started to check out of the room. "Are you okay, Tom?" My junior, Maria Johnson, looked at me with concern. She's new and still getting the hang of the job, but she's exceptionally considerate. "About the payment flow issue the other day, I'm really sorry for the trouble." "Don't worry about it. You're a newbie. Mistakes are normal, in fact. Make as many as you can now." I joked, and Maria smiled, relieved. I always believe that it's the responsibility of those in higher positions to support newcomers. That doesn't mean I plan to coddle him. Charles, despite appearances, might actually be capable at work. I had a sliver of hope, but it was quickly dashed. "Man, New York is so much fun. The girls are cute," Charles shouted loudly in the office. He didn't notice the sharp glances from the female employees around him. A month has passed since he joined our department. I've been getting busier and busier. As I expected, this father and son are not only similar in appearance but also in character. Since joining, Charles has never taken his work seriously. Mike told me that Charles had experience working at a major apparel company's overseas branch, so his business English should be decent. I suggested to Charles that he join the teleconference with the San Francisco branch this week, but he immediately replied, 9 p.m. teleconference? That's seriously crazy. I can't do it." It's true that online meetings with overseas branches often start early in the morning or late at night to match their local time. Of course, this time I would just have him sit in, and I'd do the actual talking. I invited him for his learning, but he refused outright. "After 9 p.m. is my reward time for enjoying online games," Charles said, without a trace of guilt, just like his father. I was deeply disappointed by his lack of seriousness. Moreover, Charles had a terrible habit of being late. His previous job was at a company headquartered in N-City, Ibaraki Prefecture, where he lived in a company-owned dorm. It seems life in New York is quite exciting for him. There are rumors that Charles goes out drinking every night with flashy, shady characters. It feels like he's become even more flamboyant since his first day. He finally showed up, fiddling with his newly dyed blonde hair. "I drank too much again last night. Didn't go home, but crashed at a comic cafe." As he got closer, he reeked of beer. But no one tried to reprimand him. Everyone here gave off the vibe that they didn't want to get involved with him. And who could blame them? There's no benefit in getting into it with Mike's son. "Charles, you need to be more aware of your responsibilities as an adult." Just because you're new doesn't mean everything is excused. Being late is especially unacceptable. When I reprimanded him, Charles suddenly looked annoyed and glared at me. What the hell, old man? Don't boss me around. He looked ready to snap. I've never seen someone this hungover. You're causing everyone trouble. Don't you realize that? Show some respect. I stayed calm. Maybe that made it worse, as Charles got even more agitated. Shut up. Having you as my supervisor pisses me off. You're always looking down on me. You'll never get promoted. Stuck as a chief forever. Pathetic. Charles sneered at me. Oh, seeing your face ruins my mood. I'm going for a smoke. He turned on his heel and left the office. Honestly, I hoped he wouldn't come back, but of course that wasn't going to happen. 30 minutes later, Charles returned, walking lazily. He walked straight toward me, grinning triumphantly. I told Dad on you. I was momentarily puzzled. But when I saw Mike glaring at me angrily from right behind Charles, I immediately understood. Tom, I heard you said some terrible things to Charles, and you tried to force him to work late at night, didn't you? He must be referring to the recent teleconference. Mike had completely misunderstood. Charles shrugged dramatically, distorting his face exaggeratedly. Dad, is it okay for the chief producer to be like this? I'm still new here, and he wants me to talk to foreigners right away. That's beyond tough. It's outright hazing. No, that's not true. I merely suggested that Charles sit in to learn. I tried to explain, but Mike sneered and looked at me coldly. Tom, are you taking out your frustrations on my son because you can't get promoted? You've always bossed me around despite being my subordinate. You've always looked down on me, haven't you? But that's all over today. We don't need you anymore. The team will run fine without you. Get out, you arrogant fool. Mike finally revealed his true nature. He then quietly approached me and whispered so only I could hear. You've been a nuisance for a long time. Right now, you can still save face by resigning voluntarily. There's no place for you here anymore. If you're smart, you know what I mean. After saying that, Mike returned to his usual fake smile. Sorry for the commotion. Everyone now, back to work. I'm off for a smoke. I struggled to control my trembling fists. Ignoring me, Mike and Charles walked past me with smug expressions. I can't speak English at all. That was close, Dad. Good riddance. After they disappeared, I submitted my resignation letter, eager to leave the company as soon as possible. The next day, I woke up as usual. When I realized I didn't have to go to work anymore, I thought about what I wanted to do. Maybe I'll visit that coffee shop. I remembered a coffee shop I'd been curious about, a bit off the path from my house to the station. Welcome. A gentlemanly elderly man greeted me. The aromatic scent of coffee filled the shop, making me take a deep breath. Please take any open seat. I sat at the small table in the back. As I stroked the old table and opened the menu covered in leather, I saw traditional dishes like omuras and spaghetti napolitan as the signature items. Turning the page, I found classic treats like cream soda and firm custard pudding, making the place feel even more comfortable. As I pondered the luxury of this moment, my phone suddenly rang on the table. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number. I often get calls from insurance sales or new plans from phone companies, but this one started with 090. I frowned. Should I answer? But I had a bad feeling. After a moment, the ringing stopped. But just as I felt relieved, the same number called again. This cycle of ringing, stopping, and ringing again continued relentlessly. The calls came the next day and the day after that. One day, I went back to that coffee shop. My eyes were drawn to the bookshelf filled with magazines and weekly journals. While waiting for my coffee, I absent-mindedly picked up a copy of Weekly Shonen. As I was flipping through the pages, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh!" I quickly read through the article, shocked. No way. After finishing, I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. I reopened the magazine and read the article again. The title was Panther Japan Facing Bankruptcy. What on earth happened at that workplace? I couldn't be sure how much of the Weekly Shonen article was true, but at least it revealed a side of Panther Japan Corporation that I had never known. Even after finishing my coffee, I sat there in a daze. Then the unknown number called again. Should I answer or ignore it? I was torn. But I knew that if I didn't answer now, the calls would keep coming. Resigned, I pressed answer. On the next call, Tom, right? Who is this? You've been calling non-stop for days. It's really annoying. Can you please stop? You're draining my battery. I said firmly, and there was a brief silence on the other end. Tom, don't you recognize my voice? I got your number from my wife. The voice was familiar. I racked my brain to recall. Mr. Moore, I mean the CEO. How did the CEO get my number? That could be explained later. For now, I was concerned about the company's situation. I happened to read a magazine. Is everything okay? The CEO sighed over the phone. Well, where should I begin? I straightened up, gripping my phone tightly. After I, the one who often handled Mike's messes, left, the workplace atmosphere turned tense. First, there was the collaboration project with a famous influencer I had been managing. With people spending more time at home, easy at-home workout. Content became hugely popular on major video sites. Among them, there was an influencer known for her detailed explanations and uplifting demeanor. The protein and organic seasonings she introduced would sell out instantly. Noticing this, my junior Maria contacted her agency, and they decided to collaborate on a sportswear product. However, with my abrupt resignation, the office atmosphere soured, and Maria found it hard to work. Without someone to offer advice or back them up in case of failure, Maria and other young employees lost their motivation to take on challenges. If they failed, Mike would mercilessly place all the blame on them. This approach led Maria and the younger employees to quickly seek new jobs. So, the collaboration project. Yes, it was cancelled. We no longer have a producer who knows the ins and outs of taking a project from concept to product and can lead the team. The CEO's voice was dejected. I was certain the collaboration would have been a huge success. Its cancellation would significantly impact this quarter's sales. The next problem was the Cantor sports watch. Charles messed that up. What did he do? Cantor, based in Switzerland, is a renowned watchmaker known for its highest quality timepieces. The new Cosmo series was selling extremely well, as highlighted in a recent economic news report. Panther Japan collaborated with Cantor to create a luxury sports watch aimed at affluent customers. The promotion focused mainly on personal gyms with high monthly fees. The sports watch, designed to combine Panther's rugged, sweat and water-resistant functionality with Cantor's luxury, became an instant hit. There were plans for a second release, but an incident caused everything to be scrapped. You know Charles was out partying with shady characters every night, right? Yes, more or less. He bragged about being a Panther employee to them. One night, while drunk, he dunked the sports watch in a beer mug as a joke. It was beyond a prank. The photos of his drunken antics circulated, reaching Cantor. They considered it a desecration of their craftsmanship, putting such an important item in alcohol. I buried my head in my hands. But knowing him, it wasn't surprising. The CEO continued. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The rest is as written in Weekly Shonen. I swallowed hard. The matter with the Kolkata sewing factory in West Bengal, India. Yes, that's right. The fashion industry still hasn't fully embraced the SDGs. Evidence of this is seen in major companies like Panther, which rely on mass production and mass consumption. Typically, large sewing factories are set up in South Asian countries like India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. However, the working conditions vary greatly by region. Areas with high poverty levels have long been criticized for their harsh and poor working conditions. Even when companies try to increase workers' wages, local managers or intermediaries often siphon off the money. I was involved in a project aimed at creating a safe working environment under the supervision of selected, trustworthy local staff. Charles was appointed as your successor and became the project leader. With that one sentence, I understood everything. The CEO continued in a grave tone. But he doesn't speak English and has no experience in this industry. He couldn't understand the technical terms, making communication with local staff difficult. Eventually, Charles gave up. The project collapsed, and director Mike suggested reverting to the old system. The factory collapse happened shortly after that. I looked up at the ceiling. I had once visited the Kolkata sewing factory for an inspection. The conditions were terrible, and the dilapidated building looked like it could collapse at any moment. When I entered the building wearing a helmet, the workers glared at me with disdain. I can't forget those eyes. That's why I started this project. Of course, it's not solely our company's responsibility, but public perception is different. A major apparel manufacturer producing under terrible conditions. The media loves to create that narrative. And then it spreads as the truth. Gripping my phone, I stared out the window. I took a deep breath to calm myself. So, what do you want me to do? The CEO pleaded with me to return to Panther. If he had asked me yesterday, I would have refused. But now, things were different. The incident at the Kolkata sewing factory changed my perspective completely. So I decided to return. The first thing I needed to do was clear. Hey, Charles. Charles was lounging in the seat I once occupied. Hey, old man, what are you doing here? Outsiders aren't allowed. He didn't seem to know about my current situation. Dad, some weird guy who used to work here just walked in. Shouldn't we kick him out? Charles shouted towards Mike's desk. I felt my blood boil. When? I've heard the rumors. You're rejoining us. Couldn't get a job anywhere else. How pitiful. Whose connections got you back here? Mike approached me with a smug look. Then, a loud voice called out from behind me. It was me, Director Mike. Do you have a problem with that? The CO questioned Mike with a frown. Mike clearly hadn't expected the CEO to show up. He suddenly shrank back. Mr. President, oh, I see. It was your recommendation. My apologies. Wow, old man, you've got some powerful connections. Impressive. Charles pointed at me, mocking me. I was utterly exasperated by his foolishness. Director Mike, I've heard. The collaboration with the influencer and the second joint production with Cantor have been cancelled. And I hear all the young employees, including Maria, have quit. How about your son, Charles? Is he filling the gaps left by those who left? Well, that is. Mike looked uncomfortable, suddenly confronted with the truth. Charles, I did some digging. You don't have a passport, let alone any travel history. Before joining here, you were slacking off, playing games in dorms and comic cafes. You got fired for that lazy attitude and kicked out of the dorm. Then you went crying to your dad, didn't you? What the hell? Are you trying to belittle me? No, I'm just stating the facts. Your English skills are non-existent. You took a 1-week crash course in English. That was a desperate move by your dad. No wonder you can't communicate at all. You even faked your TOEIC score. Where did you find all that out, old man? Charles, who started out defiant, was now visibly shaken by the barrage of facts. Director Mike, faking your son's credentials out of fatherly love, pathetic. Mr. President, he was supposed to gain experience and eventually become a project leader like Tom. Don't make me laugh. The CO's sharp rebuke made Mike flinch with a small yelp. I quickly moved in on Mike. Director Mike, do you realize the damage your lazy work attitude and your son's selfish actions have caused this company? No, that wasn't my intention. No excuses. Understand this. It's not just the company. The Kolkata sewing factory disaster is on you too. How are you going to make up for this? With such articles circulating, the public won't side with Panther anymore. You two are a disgrace to Panther. It's not my fault. It's all Dad's fault. Charles suddenly started whining, trying to shirk responsibility. I couldn't stand it any longer. Don't think your parents or others will always bail you out. You need to take responsibility for your actions. That's the bare minimum as an adult. I told you it's not my fault. So, you're planning to spend your whole life blaming others. Pathetic. I pity you. Once your dad is out of this company, no one will help you. You'll be stuck with the label of a useless daddy's boy. You might as well stick with your playmates. As I said this, Charles looked like he had been struck by lightning and covered his mouth in shock. I have no intention of quitting. I'm ready to dedicate my life to this company. So please, Mr. President. Sorry, but we don't need your dedication. The CEO replied with a touch of sarcasm, brushing off Mike's plea. You can't do this. I'm almost at retirement age. Kicking me out now is heartless. Don't be ridiculous. Did you really think you could retire with honors after slacking off all this time? You're delusional. With those words, Mike finally realized he had been completely abandoned. He lost all color in his face, looking utterly defeated. Here, I delivered the final blow. Why don't you admit it? You two are a burden to this company, a real liability. The second-hand smoke you spew is full of poison, drastically lowering the morale of those around you and unknowingly eroding the spirit of your valuable colleagues. You need to realize that your presence contaminates this company. Clean up that vile face and attitude of yours, and start over as a new graduate. With that, Mike and Charles staggered back and slumped to the floor against the wall. I'll inform you of the disciplinary actions later. I greeted to the CEO and left, leaving the dejected pair behind. Later, both were disciplined. Mike was severely reprimanded for falsifying his son's credentials and was terminated. It was a shame, considering he was only a few years away from retirement. Apparently, he fought hard during the internal audit to keep his severance pay, but the decision stood. Mike had planned to use his substantial severance pay to pay off his mortgage and invest in real estate. Now, at 55, he was struggling to find a new job. Finding a salary comparable to what he earned at Panther was impossible. He was having a hard time even earning a quarter of that, resorting to working night shifts at a convenience store to make ends meet. Charles, like his father, was reprimanded for his lazy work attitude. The drunken photo was the final nail in the coffin, showing his complete lack of professionalism. Charles was demoted, given a 35% pay cut, and reassigned to a regional store to start over as a sales clerk. However, he quickly gave up on that too and reconnected with the same shady people who leaked the drunken photo, reportedly becoming a dangerous courier. As evidence, Charles is now living in prison. Like father, like son. A father who relied on power and didn't work seriously, and a son who was completely irresponsible. I was somewhat curious about how these two hopeless individuals would attempt to regain any trust. The CEO, troubled by the scandal caused by the weekly Shungan article, decided to resign to bring an end to the controversy. I bear a significant responsibility for what happened with those two. Despite the public's disapproval, he had led a major company for many years. He left the company praised for his achievements and was seen off by the employees in a grand farewell. As he walked down the line, our eyes met one last time. He reached out for a handshake. Thank you for coming back. I need you moving forward, and bring your dog to visit me in Chiba sometime. I greeted silently in response. The pet I own is a rare breed called an Australian Labradoodle. The CEO wife is a breeder in M City, Chiba Prefecture, and that's where I met and adopted my dog. A few times a year, a gathering of purebred owners is held at the CEO's house. So, I knew the CEO even before I joined the company. It might be presumptuous to say the CEO entrusted this company to me, but at the very least, Panther is at a critical juncture. To help rebuild, I've been reaching out to reliable former colleagues, inviting them to work together again. Recently, I received a positive response from Maria. Determined to make a comeback, I watched the CEO walk away with renewed resolve.